Nebraska has a huge game this week. By the way, ignore the fact, because my top 25 would never do this insanity, that Nebraska is ranked behind Cincinnati, who they beat earlier this year. Don't know what we're doing. I do know that Nebraska goes to Minnesota on Friday night to play the Golden Gophers. I'll tell you right now, this will be one of my best bets of the week. Minnesota will keep this close. The Golden Gophers are not a great team. They're also not a terrible team. They're just right smack dab in the middle. Nebraska's trying to fight their way out of the middle. Here's the extra importance on this game, which I absolutely have flagged as an upset alert this week for the Cornhuskers. Last year, at this time, they had the exact same record. Their only loss was a home game that they kind of gave away to Illinois. That was their only loss. This year, their only loss is at home, and they got beat by Michigan. That's different. It's better. But after a 5-1 start last year, they went 1-5 down the stretch, scrapped and fought and clawed their way into a bowl game and broke the drought. So that was getting over a hurdle mentally as a program and for the fans. Here's another opportunity, because you go in the same spot with a more favorable schedule than you went into at this point in the season last year. Nebraska has to be able to take advantage. I don't think they're a college football playoff team. I think they're a good team. I think they're a program on the rise. But let me give you a couple of reasons why I have this flagged as an upset alert and why I like Minnesota to cover the 7.5 point spread. It's come down a little. I think Minnesota will be all right there. Reason number one, short week on the road. That's not a great combination. Reason number two, Matt Rhule has been speculated by myself and many, many others for valid reasons to be a candidate for the next head coach at Penn State University. That doesn't always bode well. That can be a distraction. That can cause just a little bit of slippage out there. But you know what? Let's say Nebraska overcomes that. Let's say they get off to a good start in this game, which to me would be the number one indicator that outside noise hasn't distracted them, that they are focused on the opponent at hand, who's 2-1 in Big Ten play so far. Only Big Ten team so far that's beaten Minnesota was Ohio State. Now they beat them very soundly because the Golden Gophers are not on Ohio State's level, nor are most teams in America, frankly. So I don't know how much of a jab that is. You know, Washington's a team that a lot of people want to have ranked. And I think the reason they aren't is you look around and go, well, I don't know exactly what their best win is. I guess it's Rutgers and Maryland or in some combination there. Like, okay, I think that's all right. Well, Minnesota's got a loss to Ohio State and Washington's got a big loss to Ohio State. Are we holding that against them? Not in a major way. Now, here's the third reason. Nebraska's defense. And this was a question I had about the Cornhuskers coming into this year. I thought they'd be able to overcome it and be a 9-3 team. I think they're right on that trajectory. They are right on that trajectory at this point in the season, in a very good position, frankly, to have that exact record that I had them at before the year. But this is a really important game. And it's an important game for their defense because they need to be able to get right. You might look at Nebraska's defensive numbers this year and think, oh, look, their defense is still playing well, even though Tony White went to Florida State to be the defensive coordinator. They're okay on that side of the ball. Nope, they're not okay. Those numbers are being inflated by the games against Akron and Houston Christian. Now, they played well against Cincinnati back in week 1. That's a game that is holding up quite well over time, might I add. But since Big Ten play began, Nebraska has allowed 30 points at home to Michigan. They scored 13 on the road last week against USC. 27 points to Michigan State. They haven't won a Big Ten conference game yet. And 31 points to Maryland, who's slightly better than I thought, but as we kind of thought before the year, is coming back down to earth and is not a great team. They're okay. Those have been the outcomes so far. 2 of those games have been at home. 2 of those games have been on the road. So, or 2 of these games will be on the road, I should say. 2 of those games were in Lincoln. Michigan and Michigan State put up 27 and 30 points. That doesn't make me feel very good. When I watch Nebraska's defense, I don't love what I see. They look like a team that can get pushed around a little too often. Now, the good news is they have won some one-possession games this year, which is also, frankly, a big sigh of relief for Nebraska fans. But Dylan Raiola cannot turn the ball over and let the Golden Gophers faithful, who we know are passionate and many, many tens of thousands strong, cannot let them get going on a Friday night. This just has upset written all over it. So I think Nebraska goes in there and wins the game. And let me say one more thing about this matchup before I talk about Oklahoma and South Carolina really quick to end today's show. This is a Nebraska run defense that has not been exceptional. You look at what happened in the game that, admittedly, I thought they would win. Against Michigan, Wolverines ran all over them all day long. That was a 3-point game. That game was not that close. Michigan was just straight up the better team. A big reason was they ran the ball comfortably. Minnesota's a team that wants to do that. I think PJ Fleck and his staff are going to look at what Michigan did and say, how can we do that? How can we replicate what Michigan was able to do? Nebraska so far this year is giving up 151 rushing yards per game. That's too many. On average, they are getting outgained on the ground this year. That makes it really hard to win, puts a lot more pressure on Dylan Raiola. But the Minnesota rushing attack hasn't gotten going. Darius Taylor has been hurt, and Fame Ijiboy has been good, capable, but it's not what we thought it might be for the Golden Gophers coming into this season. They have not had a 100-yard rusher between those two since Darius Taylor's first game against Buffalo when he carried the ball 30 times for 141 yards. That's the only time Minnesota has had a 100-yard rusher. If they get one of those guys going in a significant way to the tune of hitting the century mark, then Minnesota could win this game outright. I think Nebraska has just enough, but just enough to go win this game. Tight one on the road, 23-20. I'll take Nebraska to win a one-possession game. How about that? Going to pick them to do that again. Does that feel great? Not necessarily. Here's who else doesn't feel great. Oklahoma. Oklahoma better win this week, or it is going to be a long season. Now, I actually don't believe, call me an SEC hater if you like, the back half of Oklahoma's schedule is as difficult as it gets made out to be. This is not to say that it is easy. It is immensely challenging. They will lose multiple games coming down the stretch. South Carolina has not been the team that they were capable of being coming into this year so far. You have to go to Columbia. Oklahoma are about to become road warriors if they're going to make the SEC championship or the college football playoff, neither of which I expect them to do, because 3 of their next 4 games are away from Norman. At South Carolina, host Ole Miss next week, then go at Tennessee, have a bye, and then play at Alabama before you play Missouri and LSU. I don't think LSU is as good as everybody else thinks. That's a very winnable game for Oklahoma. Missouri at home, not easy. I like Missouri, but at home, that's a winnable game. At Alabama, looks very difficult. Crimson Tide are playing well. At Tennessee, winnable, but hard. Definitely hard. Ole Miss just struggled at home with Washington State. Ole Miss, one of those teams that will just play up or down to the level of their competition. That should be a dogfight. South Carolina this week, hungry for a win. This was the time of year last season where Shane Beamer's team caught fire and won 6 straight and had people going, they should be in the college football playoff. And yeah, I hope we don't do that again this year. So Oklahoma could make that simple by winning the football game. But as I called out with Oklahoma earlier this year, they are just too John Mateer dependent on the ground. Why can they not run the football? Where is Jaden Ott or any of the other Oklahoma backs? That's been the knock on Ben Arbuckle during his career in whatever you want to call the limelight he's been in as an offensive coordinator, is he doesn't develop a run game. He hasn't at Oklahoma. There is no semblance of it whatsoever. So if John Mateer has a bad game, you're done. You're absolutely done. I don't love that. I really don't. I do think Oklahoma goes and gets a bounce back here because the South Carolina offense, I have not been impressed. I have not been impressed so far this year. This is not one of my best bets of the week. I do think Oklahoma is going to squeak out a win in a much-needed kind of internal revenge bounce-back spot. But boy, I can't see the offense just suddenly getting themselves going. Columbia should be on fire. I'll go Oklahoma 27-20, but the Sooners need a win this week or it is going to go downhill really, really fast there in Norman. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.